Welcome back to ZAPY Speaking. That's Yangfan. I'm Aaron, and today we're doing something a little different than usual. Previously, we took presidents and presidential candidates and compared them to each other. We had speakers fighting each other, but today we're just analyzing because we're looking at two very different speeches. One is by a common feature of ours, Stephen Colbert, and how he transitions between one thing to another, and the other is by a world championship winning speaker, Dananjaya Hettiarachchi. We'll be looking at their transitions. We'll be trying to see how they switch the feelings, how they switch the direction, how they switch the topic, the message, the idea of their speech, and get a little closer to their point. So we're going to take a look at that. Let's jump right into it. All right, we are going to start with Mr. Colbert.
Not the police in this case. Now, I know a fear is a motivator. They are desperate to turn out the fearful. But stoking fear is a dangerous game. Last night, there was yet another tragedy in Kenosha, Wisconsin. All this week, there have been demonstrations protesting the shooting of Jacob Blake by police on Sunday. There's been fireworks, there's been tear gas, there's been fires, but yesterday, violence escalated.
I hate to cut it short there, but we can't go much longer because that was a great transition and we don't want to lose the idea. Of course, there's more information and Stephen Colbert goes on to discuss in great detail and great length some interesting ideas that are obviously very relevant to today, but we're just focusing on the transitions. I think he does a good job of swinging into a different topic. He had just come down from some humor there. He's going into something much more serious and he does a great job of shifting into the emotions. What do you think, Yangfan?
Yeah, I really want to comment on his facial expression and his body language here. You can definitely hear from his tone that there's a serious issue, that the police in some part of the world can be no longer trusted. He doesn't only deliver by a really deep tone. He also do with his body posture. He lean on side of the shoulder and get close to the camera like this and look at people right into the eyes. And then on top of the deep voice. So that all of a sudden it conveys there is a serious issue. If you watch the whole video, you will know why he does that. Because what comes before this transition is some light joke and making fun of what's going on in the news. It's all laughter. But what he's talking next about the police to the protester is not a funny thing anymore. So he control the energy, bring the energy in, and bring it down a bit, and tell people, okay, pay attention to this issue.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I'd like to talk more about that after, how we use our emotion to shift between subjects. But let's look at another transition into a point here, done by Dananjaya Hettiarachchi, which I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not sure. Either way, let's take a look and see what he does in another 30-second clip.
This man was special. I looked at him and he looked at me. And then he said the most amazing thing. He said, son, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. If you decide to work with me, I can help you find that something. And I was like, whoa, that's the first time in my whole life somebody has ever told they see something in me.
It's a very different style. And of course, it's funny that in this case, the comedian Stephen Colbert is not the one making jokes and getting laughs. It's another speech. And there's a great discussion on the importance of humor. But I think what we see here is great use of eye contact in particular to help people know it's important, and the use of energy to make something, to change how dynamic something is. So the eye contact, what I mean is you'll notice right near the beginning when we watch there, he says, this man was special. And then he makes like 3 or 4 seconds worth of eye contact straight, no words. And luckily the camera zooms in and it shows he's kind of panning across his audience while he's doing it. It just holds this hyper tight focus. And that eye contact tells us, this is important. You better listen. And he goes pretty quiet into the next section. And then he gets to this pivotal moment. I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. The audience laughs, and then he immediately transitioned into a way higher energy portion. So you just used his eye contact to draw us into a low energy but high importance moment, and then he transitions with his out of the eye contact into higher energy, where he then brings us into this more chaotic, and it shows you how important this moment is because he's getting high energy, he's getting excited about it, and then he goes on in the speech later to illustrate a number of times where and he had this same experience, someone says that phrase to him, and then he has the experience of high energy again. So it's an excellent way of transitioning between points, drawing people in, showing them the important thing, and using that important thing as a springboard to move on to the next idea. So he does that really well. And of course, body language, other things in there as well as voice, body language, it's all great. But I really want to draw attention to those two things in comparison to Stephen Colbert's use of the high intensity, which is different. And he's looking at the camera too. They've got that similarity, but their way of getting into the topic is different, and of course different topics, so different methods.
Exactly. It's a very different speech. That's why we kind of decide it's meaningless to pick a winner and loser. In both cases, they are all great, so it doesn't exist to pit against each other. The content in these two speeches are very, very unique on its own, and they are also very typical. So the one in the Toastmaster speech is a typical motivational speech of sharing a personal experience and to motivate others. But what the world champion did really good is he's able to distill all the experience into one phrase. Even after many months, I watched that video, I forget everything about it. But I remember the catchphrase is that I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. And that's the only thing I remember after a few months. So that's when I know that speech deliver its purpose. It distill everything to this one sentence, and that's what they wanted to do. If you go back to the same video, which you can see in the link below, you can watch the full video and you know why such phrase is so important. The speaker come back to the same phrase again, many times. So that is like a hammer. You hammer the key message into the audience mind over and over again. So then they will take this information and walk away with it. And that is what happened to me. For Colbert, it's different. He's on the TV every evening reporting US news. If you see some of his show, he say he's tired. He's tired about what is happening, and he's tired about reporting this sad news. And he's calling for a change in your way, his show. So then in that video delivery, he really, really gained energy in to say, okay, guys, we need to take this very serious. And that is his whole message. The common thing between the two speakers is, as Aaron and I all touched on in the previous show commentary, is they use their eyes and body language to deliver the message. In fact, a lot of our speech, most part of information are delivered by our body language. People look how you act and match what your content is, and they can remember the most part of it. So that's the key element from these good, strong speakers we can take away, again, from two very different speech styles, but they all show this common point.
Yeah, and just to kind of reaffirm one thing that was mentioned there, the idea of a repeated point being really memorable. Not just anything that gets repeated is memorable, of course. I think the key thing to remember with that repeated point is if you repeat a point that sends the message or that has been designed to encapsulate the message, that will make the entire speech memorable. And that's what the speaker here did. That's what Dananjaya Hettiarachchi did, is that he made his whole speech fit into one line, so that it's to the point where if someone says to Yangfan, I see something in you, he's going to be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And not only will he know the phrase and remember the moment, he's going to get a certain amount of the meaning coming with it. He's going to get a certain amount of the underlying message, which is nicely encapsulated, which works really effectively as a transition, because then later in the speech, you can reuse that line to bring people back to a key point, and that helps them then move on to a new one because it's giving them context for the new point, which there's a number of structures you can build around that, but that's not important right now. Conversely, with Colbert, since he's doing something different every single time, he can't have that key point repeated. I think he does do an excellent job of still transitioning. He moves between topics like that. The key difference between these two speeches, these two presentations, one is one topic for 7.5 minutes. The other is 10 topics in 13 minutes. And so the transitions are, in a sense, or almost by nature, they have to be different. One is transitioning and moving around the same idea. The other is transitioning to new ideas and making them feel connected. And they both do it really well. I'd argue they're both experts in what they do. But it requires different techniques. Although it requires different techniques, there are a few similarities, like that eye contact, like the varying energy, like the use of humor, actually, because humor is a very common tool that you should use probably in most of your speeches. Even when you have serious moments, it's good to have humor as well. But I think they both do exceptionally well with it, which is part of why I don't particularly want to say which I think is better.
Yeah, so that's why we're making the difference slightly different from our previous one. So I guess the last point in this video we want to touch on is how important transition is. It's in one way it's a shift of energy, and the other way you transit from your introduction. Typically in this Toastmaster speech, the first 3 minutes kind of the introduction about his personal experience. He didn't do really well until he hear that phrase. So that transition in the Toastmaster speech basically make the speech as way it is later on. So that's like it's like launch pad phase of the speech. When the Colbert transition is more like he need to be smooth, need to connect all the points. But regardless, the transition in the speech is very important, especially when anybody give a more than 12-minute speech, because humans' attention cliff is around 10 to 12 minutes. So if you give a 40, 50-minute speech, you need to think about how to do transition of 3 topics, beginning and the ending. So transition is actually a very, very important part of any speech.
I'd even add on that transitions are important in short speeches, in particular when you are improvising or when you're making something up. So someone asks you a question in an interview or something, you have to respond to it. I think that it's really important to have good transitions, because if you're good at transitioning, if you're good at moving between ideas, if someone asks you a difficult question or you have to talk about a complex topic that you might not know as much about as you'd like, if you're good at transitioning, you can move the topic to something you like more without it really feeling like you're changing the topic, obviously, with it really feeling like just an extension of the topic and not a different topic. So transitions are a powerful tool in longer speeches when you have to cover multiple topics, but also in shorter speeches when you want to get to better topics, or really any length of speech for a variety of reasons. But those are 2 big ways of using them. That would be my takeaway here. With that said,
yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I suppose it's time for a final word, though. I would say that in summary, transitions are important. There are many ways to do them. Your eye contact is pivotal. Your energy changes are very important. And tone changes as well, like Colbert did, where he drops down his tone and lets us know we're coming into a new point. But I think the main thing I'm going to summarize is you need all of these things. If you just do one on its own, it's not going to feel like a proper transition. But if you take every part of the speech and start shifting it towards something else, it's going to feel like a natural movement, a natural transition into something new. So put it all together and you'll have an effective transition. Any other thoughts, Yangfan, before we wrap it up?
I only have one word. I want to explain the words. The one word keep coming to my mind is seamless. So what it means is when the speaker doing this speech, the audience need to feel like the whole speech is coherent. When the topic change, it need to be seamless. And that is a technique side of thing, and there's also a content side of thing we shouldn't overlook. And for sure, this winning speech, these TV shows, they have a team of writers to craft the content. But when individuals do speech, we also need to pay attention to that part. So I would like to just highlight this one word, seamless, as a key element of public speaking here.
All right. Well, hopefully that is a seamless transition back into your day-to-day life. With all of that said, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Stay fishy out there and have a great weekend.
We'll see you next time.